Hi. So I wanted to jump on here and record a little video that would complement and supplement our classes that we've had so far. And so this one, we're going to do a little mini lesson on suffering and forgiveness. I like the way that Bashar talks about a hero is that a healer is that a healer is someone who holds space for healing to occur. We witness and we hold space in acceptance and non-judgment to see a person and see all of a person, and that we're not necessarily trying to fix a person. We're trying to hold space for a person to then use this information and then do with it what they want. Now, something that Bashar says that's really important is our job is to hold that vibration. Our job is to witness and offer our offering, and especially however we feel, like whatever way makes us feel creative and excited, because the whole point of living is to like follow your passion, follow your bliss. But it is none of our business what a recipient or a client does with this information. It's none of our business if someone goes, well, that's bullshit, I'm never going to use them again, and does no healing with it, or takes nothing from it, or even runs away with a completely different interpretation of the information than what we feel or know the interpretation is about, which has happened a lot of times for me, where I'll say a thing and I'll say it the way that I'm being told to say it. And then someone will come back and say, oh, yeah, it totally reminded me of this thing. And it's like, oh, kind of, you're so close, but go like, here's a little, I can give you a little more information to maybe break open that nut a little further. But ultimately, it's none of my business, because maybe one day someone will be at a point where they go like, oh shit, it all makes sense. This still happens to me with my ayahuasca journey, where it's been 10 years. And there are moments where I go like, oh, this is what was meant from that. Oops. So that's what we're doing, is we're just offering the medicine in the form of the story and in the form of holding space with non-judgment. I think I keep hitting that point home because that's the most important thing in this space. And again, it doesn't mean that you have to be non-judgmental in all of your life. It's just in this space, we're in a field beyond right doing and wrong doing. In this space, there's everything is right. Everything is fine. Everything is neutral. I'm not even going to say everything's good. It's that everything is neutral. Now, in Buddhism, suffering is considered one of the four noble truths. And it's like so important that they even like break down suffering into three different categories. There's like different types of suffering that are just inherent in human life. And the idea is not to expect to be free from suffering, but well, I guess you're like working towards being free from suffering but that's like enlightenment. So it's interesting because from the perspective of Buddhism, because it's one of the Four Noble Truths, it's like something that we can accept as part of the nature of existence instead of a commentary on who we are as people. And I think that that's a really helpful perspective because it makes it about life instead of about me. Who am I? What's my karma? What have I done wrong? What am I? Why did I deserve this? Because there's no such thing as deserving, right? So the three categories of suffering, which is called dukkha in Buddhism. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but I think it's dukkha. So there's dukkha, which is the suffering of painful experiences. So this includes physical and mental suffering, and it could be from birth, like the mother experiencing the pain of giving birth, but also the baby experiencing the pain of going from like floating in this warm, perfect space where all you can hear is like muffled sounds and a heartbeat to being ripped into this world with bright lights and loud sounds and so many senses, right? Like your eyes are open. It's a lot going on. So that's like, we start our life suffering. There's also the suffering of aging or illness or dying or just like general mental distress from experiencing something that's undesirable. And then there's viparinama dukkha, which is the suffering of pleasant or happy experiences changing to unpleasant when the causes and conditions that produce the pleasant experiences cease. Now, one of the other noble truths is that everything changes. And so it is inevitable because of the cyclical nature, the changing nature, the constant changing nature of life, that moments of great joy and pleasure are also fleeting. And so we experience suffering when we try to hold on to moments that are past, to experiences that are past. When we're attached to it and trying to recreate it and can't let it go, that creates suffering. And then the other kind of suffering is sankhara dukkha, which is the suffering of conditioned experience. So this includes a basic, like, unsatisfactoriness, like a dissatisfaction pervading all of existence, all forms of life, because all forms of life are changing, impermanent, and without any inner core or substance. So on this level, it indicates a lack of satisfaction or a sense that things never measure up to our expectations or standards, because ultimately at the end of the day, because we're in a simulation, because this is a projection, our anything that's external to us ultimately is empty. So it's that like suffering when that feeling of dissatisfaction when we realize that, oh, it's not solving all my problems. So the idea, what I love about thinking about suffering being inherent to life is that it then challenges us or asks the question like, so then what? So what are you going to do about it? How are you going to face the world? If you can't rid your life of suffering, how are you going to choose to experience the suffering that's inevitable in your life? And I think that reframe is great from like not just the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves or even tell other people about ourselves, but I think that it's great from the perspective of forgiveness, that these miscommunications are going to happen, that we're going to be in love one day and out of love another day. So it's not even just that the external world changes or that our circumstances change. Hopefully, we're also growing and changing on a daily basis, which means that as we change, our relationship with our external world is going to change as well. And that's going to create, if we're attached to things always being the way that they've been, then that will also create suffering of some kind. So I think what this does is this perspective creates space for grace, so that when we are experiencing suffering, that we don't have to judge ourselves too harshly or critically. It gives us space for compassion, because there is grief that we experience when things change, and that's okay because it's inherent to life. Okay, because it's inevitable, it becomes easier to forgive and to let go, because it's just part of the cyclical changing nature of life, which brings us into forgiveness. And this is something that we talked about a little bit on day one, because if there is no right, wrong, good, bad, then what does that mean about the experiences that we have in life? And is there a judgment or is there going to be judgment, a judgment day, a judgment, whatever? What does it mean about what does that mean about forgiveness then? I'm going to share this with you again, because I think it's such a great description of forgiveness that we'll use going forward. So I am going to.
I always love those moments on the Oprah show when somebody said something that made us look at life in a completely new way.
Well, the little hairs on my head rose when you said that, so I know that was a bing, bing, aha moment. There are little bing, bing, bingers going on right now.
Yeah.
Bing, 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 bing. Anybody binging?
After 25 years and more than 30,000 guests, that's talking to a lot of people. It was one man's definition of forgiveness that changed my life.
You mentioned that the secret to really finding true happiness is forgiveness. What do you mean by that?
It really means letting go of the past. It really means letting go of our perception that we need to hold a grievance the rest of our lives. That if we really want to hold on to grievances, we'll never really be happy. It's really a willingness to see the person in the light of love rather than in the action that happened. So it's really changing the perception, and it really means letting go of the past that we thought we wanted. You know, we can't really change that past. So it means really releasing the negative perception of it and coming back to the present.
That was a transcendent moment for me, bigger even than an aha. He said, forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could be any different. I think for myself, and I know many of you, you think forgiving means accepting what has happened to you. Well, it is accepting that it has happened to you, not accepting that it was okay for it to happen. It is accepting that it has happened, and now what do I do about it? Forgiving is giving up the hope, not holding on, hoping, wishing that it could have been any other way than it actually was. Giving up the hope that the past could be any different. And when I got that, I think it took me to the next level of being a better person, because I don't hold grudges for anything or any situation, and neither should you. It's letting go so that the past does not hold you prisoner, does not hold you hostage.
Okay. I love that idea of forgiveness, because also what it does is it gives us the power to choose how it becomes about us, and it doesn't become about like contingent on the other person apologizing or taking responsibility. It's completely contingent on us deciding how we want to live our lives, which is ultimately what we're always trying to get back to, is empowerment, is being the decision maker, the choice maker in our lives, expressing our free will, which we can't really do as well if we're operating from the prison of the burden of carrying all of these past hurts with us, right? Because the other thing that without forgiveness, what it does is it means that we're making choices from this place of like vengeance or equal, like trying to balance the scales ourselves instead of letting the universe do that for us. Suddenly we become the person trying to seek justice or enact justice when we don't really know what we're balancing, right? Because we can't see the greater vision or the greater picture of it. So I love this definition of forgiveness. It means that forgiveness is dropping a narrative around a particular injustice. It's just accepting what has happened and letting it stay in the past, not carrying it with us every moment. Forgiveness is letting go of the coulda, shoulda, woulda, of trying to create a different past, and instead reminding us to focus on the present, or even like to some extent thinking about the future that we want to be regardless of the past, right? Forgiveness is a suggestion at viewing or seeing that other person without the residue of the past. Instead, we're meeting the version of the person that's meeting us in this present moment, because every moment is an opportunity for renewal, right? And A Course in Miracles talks about a miracle being anything that's like a shift in perception. And so even if we go from seeing someone as like a bad person to a good person, that's a miracle, especially if we've experienced some kind of like injustice from them. And so forgiveness is the tool that we can use to create miracles in our relationships and in our dynamics. You actually don't even have to see the person again. Forgiveness doesn't mean that you can have coffee with someone who hurt you. And depending on what happened, you very well could never speak to that person again and still forgive, because forgiveness has nothing to do with the other person. It has to do with you. Forgiveness has nothing to do with the other person. They're just playing a role, right? They're doing their thing. Forgiveness is everything about, okay, this happened to me. Who's the person that I want to be? How do I want to move forward in my life? What is the life that I want to move forward with, right? So saying I forgive you is not really forgiveness, even though it's like something that we see all the time. We're beaten over the head with this idea of forgiveness being like, I forgive you. But as long as we're still holding on to the moment, then it's not really forgiveness. So this brings us to the radical forgiveness sheet. So this goes back to the idea of us all being one. We're all one. We're all part of the all that is. And people are mirrors or actors in the play that are playing out dramas with us. And we can see these people as for the lessons that they teach us and help us create a new perspective for our like relationships and dynamics and the way that we view ourselves and the way that we view the world. That's what they're offering us, even in really like disgusting, abusive situations. Because I'm not going to act like people don't get raped. People get raped. Children get raped. You know what I mean? It's like horrific, awful things. People get murdered. People abandon children. People abuse children. Like there's horrific things that happen in this world. And I'm saying that still on some level, if I didn't experience the abuse that I experienced or the abandonment that I experienced, I would not be the person that I am today. I wouldn't be able to hold space for things that made me feel uncomfortable, because there's very little that makes me uncomfortable that anyone else can experience because of my own experience. And I know that like it means nothing about a person that they go through an experience because it's just an experience, right? And I am grateful that I have this perspective. I love this aspect of myself, and it exists because of the pain that I've experienced, right? And so this kind of feeds back into the idea of soul contracts, that we have a plan and then we cast people to play different roles that will really drive the message. Ooh, this will be a good scene. That'll be so dramatic. So it's like we're writers, right? We're acting in a play that we wrote on the other side before we came here. And then it's like one of those directors. It's like Mike Lee is this director who's famous. He's British. He's famous for instead of writing a script that actors remember the lines and memorize, he workshops the whole thing. So he just gets everyone together in a room and then they kind of build the story by doing different acting exercises and stuff. And so life is like a Mike Lee film where we have the cast, we know who the characters are going to be, but the story's not specific. What I appreciate about the Radical Forgiveness Worksheet is that the foundation of it is rooted on this idea that we have soul contracts, that people are just playing roles. On the other side, we probably fucking love them. They could be our best friends, and it's going to be awkward when we get over there and we're like, oh shit, you, that was great. I really hated you that time. So this helps us get there before we die. Because this is what I was trying to say earlier too. We're all going to die. So we're all eventually going to be on the other side and go like, oh shit, I really misinterpreted that one. Or like, of course it was you. Of course it was this thing. And the idea is, we're going to get there eventually. So there's no winning, losing, whatever. We'll realize it. And then maybe we'll go like, shoot, let me try again. I know I'll get it this time. So then we might come back to Earth and experience it again. Who knows? It's up to us. Or maybe we can experiment with what it would feel like to get there before we die. So it's not even like you're required to experience forgiveness or do the Radical Forgiveness Worksheet. These are just all available to you depending on the ways that you want to play with life. Because sometimes the drama is fun. And so there's no judgment for that either. And sometimes there's something beyond that we can play with, that's like a different kind of drama, a different kind of suffering, a different kind of chaos. Because I think there's something really exciting about the idea that suffering could be like real, actual pain and betrayal, or suffering could be just the grief that we experience when something really great is over. And then we have to move on to the next great thing that's also going to be over. So I want to say that forgiveness helps us get to that kind of path more than some of the like chaotic dramas do. And forgiveness helps with that. Okay, so with the Radical Forgiveness Worksheet, it's important to know that this is for you only. Like, it's not about the other person. You don't need to share this with anyone else. It's only for you. You don't need to go to the person and be like, oh, I just realized that you're playing a role and that I learned this from you, and so I forgive you. No, that's none of their business. Whether or not they believe you on that is none of your business. You know what I mean? All that matters is that you get there yourself. This tool simply helps us release the harbored pain and resentment from our bodies. It also helps us give us a new perspective about our own suffering and the world. And sometimes we see this person's actions in everyone. Like I was saying, that I feel like sometimes I can be in a place of like, just when I'm about to win, the rug gets pulled out from underneath me, is the story that I'm telling all the time. And so in order for me to see that this is the story that I'm telling, then I need to experience this thing happening so that I can say like, oh shit, this is my view on the world. And is that what I want? No, I want, just as I'm about to win, I have a whole team behind me, like running a marathon. My favorite part of running was the like high fives that you would get and people cheering you on. If that says anything about me. But so it's, instead of it being like right when I'm about to win, I roll my ankle and I never make it across the finish line. Why can't it be like just when I'm about to win and I feel like I can't go on further, I have a whole team of people cheering me on and giving me high fives and reminding me that I'm doing it. I'm already doing it and I'm almost there. Why can't that be my story? Yeah, I would prefer that story. Okay, let's move forward with that story. And so, yeah, sometimes things reveal themselves so that we can see the story that we're telling about our lives. And that can be really powerful work. And so we can also do the Radical Forgiveness Worksheet with ourselves. But usually what we're projecting, this idea that the rug gets pulled out from under me, comes from an original wound where, this happened to me because of a dynamic that I had with my grandma. So when I'm feeling like the rug's getting pulled out from under me, something that would be really beneficial would be to do this Radical Forgiveness Worksheet and do it with my grandmother, or do it with and maybe there's a younger version of this memory from before I was 12. And so what does that look like? And I can continue to do the Radical Forgiveness Worksheet until I like really let it go, let that story go. I have to drop the narrative for this to actually mean that I did forgiveness. Because if it's like, oh, I forgive that person, but I'm still carrying the story that I walked away from that hurt or resentment, then I haven't forgiven. I haven't let it go. It's like, I'll forgive that moment, but I'm going to carry the pain with me, the stiffness, the shitty part of it is the story. So if I'm going to continue to carry the story, I have to be willing to drop the narrative. And so sometimes you have to do the worksheet from multiple angles, multiple times, until you find the thing that helps you drop the story. Because yes, we'll continue to project it out into the world. It doesn't matter. That's why people are like, will say that you always end up dating the same person. So you can dump the guy, but then he'll show up again in another form. Well, it's because you're projecting a certain thing that is, what is it that you need to forgive underneath that? So forgiveness is about getting to a place where we can respond to the world from the present instead of reacting from the past, which means that we can have the same stimuli. We can go on a date with the same fuck boy that has hurt us 12 times, and this time it'll be like, oh, shoot, this is dumb. I'm walking away. And it doesn't make us feel like a certain type of way anymore. It doesn't make us feel like, oh, is this all I'm worth, or whatever the story is? I don't know. But when the thing happens again, we'll know that we've actually forgiven because we've let that narrative go, and we're getting to respond in the present with curiosity, or with like, ooh, let's try this a new way and see what happens, versus the same defensiveness or the same reactions that come with the same old story that we've been telling forever. So the Radical Forgiveness Worksheet, what is it? Luckily, it's a tool that someone has already created. So I'm gonna share the screen again. What you can do is just go through and answer all of the questions on your own. You don't need to turn it in to anyone, but it's gonna guide you through a process of finding the situation where you have the upset and confronting that person. I'm upset with you, person, fill in the name in the blank, because you hurt me when you blah, 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 blah. And because of what you did, I feel angry and hurt and abused. Then it's about acknowledging our own humanness. So I lovingly recognize and accept my feelings and judge them no more. I'm entitled to my feelings. So you rate, how are you feeling about this statement? How are you feeling about, I own my feelings? No one can make me feel anything. My feelings are a reflection of how I see the situation. So yeah, you continue to go through this process. I won't read the whole thing to you because you'll have it, but you may go through this the first time and maybe you're not completely there, that no one can make me feel anything because obviously this person made me mad. So maybe I'm a little skeptical about this, but that's okay, because the idea is to continue doing the process until you actually feel it, because it's for you. It does no one any favors if you just go through the motions of doing this worksheet without actually believing it in it. So this is just a resource. This is just a permission slip to help us reframe grievances that we may be holding, that may be repeating patterns, that may be being projected out into the world, so that we can have a little bit of not just peace, but a little more power over the present. Because when we're triggered, it's easy to respond from the past. It's easy to go into fight or flight. This is like nervous system regulation too, because we don't want to go into fight or flight over everything. And so when we reframe, drop the narrative, actually have forgiveness, we end up in a place where we get to just meet the moment where it is, however that looks. It means that a person that hurt us from our past, maybe they're our cousin, maybe they're our brother, and we have to see them at every family function. And what it means is that I can meet my brother as he is today without it having to be who he was 6 months ago, who he was a year ago, who he was all these times that happened before. I could just be like, oh, who are you today? How can we connect today? And it feels like, not that we're more in control of our life, but we're not as powerless to circumstance, because we're meeting the moment instead of like, what's going to happen this time? You know what I mean? So that is forgiveness. That is suffering. I think that meeting suffering, accepting suffering, becoming familiar with suffering doesn't necessarily mean an invitation for more suffering. But as long as we're like living a life where we're trying to avoid suffering at all costs, which we think that we can do by creating safety, by creating stability, by having control over certain things, that when those systems start to crumble through this great extermination, then we realize that we can't outrun life. We can't resist life. Life is going to move through us. It's going to find a way, right? And it's almost like we are all of these methods that we put into place to try to avoid suffering is like the concrete, the sidewalks that we're paving over the earth to create stability. But life is the flower that's finding the crack to bloom, and life always finds a way. And so, do we want it to move through us in resistance, or do we want it to flow through us so that we can flow with it? And hopefully, this will help. And so, I will send you the Radical Forgiveness Worksheet. You can print it out, you can do it, you cannot do it. It's always optional, but I think that it's a really powerful tool and permission slip that you can have at your disposal.